In March of this year, I recorded my 12-track debut album with the help of a bunch of amazing people. One of those people was Addison Sauvan, who mixed it. You might know him as the guy who used to play bass on the JHS show. Recently, Addison and I scheduled a call together to just record us talking about the production and mixing process of this whole record. And we wanted to share that with you. So whether you're looking for some tips and tricks, you're interested in the process, or you just want to see some good conversation, we think that you'll enjoy this video. Take a look. Well, first song's out, so I'm pretty stoked about that.
Congratulations.
Thank you, man.
Yes.
Haven't had like time to celebrate it yet, just trying
Yeah.
to like get that thing going. But
Yeah.
I'm really, man, like getting these like masters back, post mix is like even greater. And Caden had so many great things to say about your
Oh,
mixes going into it. Um,
man.
so
Sweet.
it seems like you set everybody up for success really well.
Oh.
But just wanted to kind of start out and just ask, like,
Mhm.
this was your first full length album, was my
Yep.
first full length album, so that's a nice little
Yeah.
thing to share.
Yeah.
So like, what was your general process going into it?
That's a great question. Like what is what's my process? Well, I think the biggest thing is trying to maintain consistency song to song, which can be a bit of a challenge because you recorded stuff. I'm making assumptions, but you recorded stuff over, a long period of time. And so I think for me, sonically, I just want to maintain consistency. I like to start with drums and bass. That's kind of like building that foundation for each song, which once those are good, then I'll kind of like dial in a master bus that, like I've got decent levels from drums and bass, which are, can be a lot of energy and loudest parts of songs, and leave enough headroom for myself and on the master bus. And then, yeah, just kind of start piecing things together and fitting things in like a puzzle piece. And I don't know if that answers your question, but it's just like kind of massaging things until they're done. And I learned this really cool, I've seen a few mixers do it, but the one in particular that I listened to talk about it a lot was a mixer named John Castelli. He's worked on just a ton of like really really big stuff, and he talked about this way of mixing. He's basically like, okay, I start at the beginning of the song, and I will I will basically like I'll push play and listen, and I will begin a mix, or I'll begin making tweaks on each individual part as I hear it as needed, and then I'll start over. So he's like, I actually typically don't even listen to the full song until I have basically mixed the entire thing. And he's like, it's at that point, then I'll go back and replay everything. But he's kind of like, so he's mixing in sections. He might mix the first 10 seconds of a song, for 20-30 minutes and not work on anything else. So he's
Oh,
just doing that stuff. And then it's kind of like he'll play that through. And so what that gives him is context always for the next thing that's coming. So I think that's a really cool way of looking at mixing, and something that I've started to try to adopt. Like even this morning, I was working on a song for another artist, and um, that was my approach. I just started at the beginning, and like as I hear things, I make those tweaks and then
hmm.
start over. It's like, I've made that tweak. I want to hear it in context. Let's go back. Let's start over at the beginning of the song and hear now the first 30 seconds. Like, okay, that's good. Then we get to 40 seconds and it's like, okay, I make a change. Let's go back and let's hear it again in the first 40 seconds. So there's a lot of that in my process too. That at least I've started to adopt some of that stuff, and did for years as well. And so that's really helpful for me.
Cool. What do you think about I know there's kind of I guess like a two-sided view on this of there's like the never solo and the like
Mm-hmm.
solo crowd. Which one do you
Yeah.
kind of fit into, or like what's your process with that? Like you say you start with drums and bass. Does that
Mm-hmm.
mean that you're like cut everything out, just listen to drums and bass, or are you like, I want to hear all of the tracks and like slowly get these things to sonically fit in?
Yeah, I am definitely, I'd say probably 80 or 90% in context. So I've
Cool.
tried to stop soloing unless there's an issue that I hear that I can't fix So, and then like an example of that would be like I'm hearing this like weird overtone in a snare drum. Like I'm probably
Mhm.
going to solo that because I know like that overtone's bothering me, but it's going to be a lot quicker and easier for me to find it if I listen to that in solo. But in general, starting with bass and drums for me is more about just like getting levels set and providing enough headroom for myself. And oftentimes too, I might even do like some sort of static mix to begin with. So like no faders moving, but let's get a general level for everything.
Mhm.
Um, but even then I got to leave enough headroom because I'm adding, plugins and saturation and things like that. And so that's kind of why I start with drums and bass because those tend to be the loudest. Um, Things in terms of like energy and of course a vocal too is typically out front and stuff. But um, in terms of what takes up lots of space, those two instruments for me like kind of set the foundation for the rest of the mix.
Sure.
So yep. Try
Cool.
not to solo. That's my
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was just
that's
wondering.
my biggest thing. Yep.
I know that's like when I've kind of gone down things myself, it's like I'll do the solo. I used to do the solo thing and it would
Mm-hmm.
then I'd get the mix, like turn everything bells on and it makes no sense. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's cool. Um yeah, was there anything that you felt was like an independent you kind of thing that you found while mixing this? That's something that maybe you didn't pick up from someone else, or is a combination of things, or like an open rebellion against what you're supposed to do? Whatever it is, like, is there something that you kind of found that you were like, oh, this is like part of my process?
Uh, this isn't this isn't really necessarily new to me, and I'm saying this because it's also something that you reached out to me about. You mentioned, but like the amount of saturation that I use on bass guitar
Mm-hmm. Oh
is
yeah.
not unique. Yeah, it's not unique to me at all because I've heard so many people solo their bass tracks, and it's like
Yeah.
just crazy. But um, that's one thing that I noticed, especially on some of the more aggressive tracks like Jericho, for
Mm-hmm.
instance, how much saturation you can get away with in a mix on bass, drums, even vocals, like just creating energy and stuff like that. But bass in particular was
Yeah.
one where I was let's add a little more. Let's add a little
Yeah.
more.
And we'll definitely talk about just that song at some point
Okay,
because that one
cool.
is like, uh, man, I don't know if I like this. I love the song. The process of making that song has not been easy. Like
Yeah.
from start to when, like even I'm pretty sure that once we got to mastering, Jericho was also the most difficult song to
Was it
get like our
really?
final on. Yeah, I think we went through the most versions of it because
Okay.
which was great. Like I think it was one of those things where it's a little different from the rest of the album,
Yeah.
sonically, even though it doesn't feel weird when you get into it. Like when you go in and out of it, it feels right. But
Yeah.
as far as what's actually happening there, it's so dramatically different from everything else.
Yeah.
And it changes a lot. Um, but yeah, we'll get to that one. That's a fun one.
Yeah. Good.
Which I mean, we might accidentally get into it with what my next question was, which was
Okay.
what was the most difficult part of this mix, whether it's like an instrument that
Hmm.
we recorded or an individual
Yeah.
song or the whole. What do you think was like the hardest part of doing this?
So you included multiple guitar tracks
Yeah.
for each guitar part. And for me, it was probably making the decision of which tracks to use based on what I was trying to get, like understand your vision and go, oh,
Mm-hmm.
what was his goal here, maybe, and then also what works best. And so I think you recorded stereo for each part,
Yeah.
or at least a wet and a dry. Maybe am I right?
Um, yeah, depending on the song, with most of them, I have a wet going into the orange to an
Yep.
orange. That's a orange rocker 15 Terror with a 12
Nice.
inch speaker.
Yep.
That's my effects one, and then I
Okay.
actually like. I don't. This is fun. I don't know if I've told you this stuff. So we were in this cabin. It was like a 3 bedroom like lake house. It was all wood, which was awesome. It was like super
Dude.
great for acoustics. And it's an artist retreat. So there are these giant like paper and plaster and like fabric pieces of art on the walls that were 3D. So like it was soundproofing already there. Like it
Oh,
was a phenomenal room to record in. And so I had the wet amp downstairs with me, and then I had bussed all the way upstairs into a separate room. Was a 4x12 Marshall,
okay.
and that's where I was like, let's go clean tone, but just like as big sounding clean tone as we can in this. So it's
Yep.
probably distorting a little bit in that one.
Mhm.
Both of those are marked or are mic'd with SM7s
Cool.
too. So yeah,
Nice.
for most of them, that's the way it is. For a couple
Yeah.
of them, I think both of them had wet effects on them.
Okay.
Or there were a few where I did like a stereo effect where it was like the delay might have moved
Yeah.
between them. But for the most part, I tried
Okay.
to keep it pretty simple for you. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I don't actually know quite how you mix those because I have looked at the
Yeah.
stems and seen that there's somewhere only one of them's used, and
Mhm.
then somewhere I think you might have merged them together. So yeah, sorry, you can continue. I went off on a
No,
tangent.
no, that's a great tangent. That's cool to note. I have a question for you about that cabin then, but I'll finish answering. I would say I don't want to say for sure because I'd like actually have to go back and look, but I rarely, if ever, used more than just one per
Cool.
part. Um, so yeah, just I guess I hopefully I picked right. You were excited about the mixes, so that was good.
That's all good.
But my question for you was: Is that where you guys track drums
Yeah,
in that studio?
yeah.
Okay, because your drum tones rocked. Like your
Oh,
raw
dude,
stuff was really good.
Kaike is going to be so happy to hear that.
Yes, it was
Yeah,
awesome.
that was like we did all the drums are recorded in 3 days.
Wow.
Which
Okay.
we went pretty much 8 a.m. to midnight, like for three
Oh,
days doing them. Because
dude.
he drove up. It's supposed to be a 5.5 hour drive from where he was to where we recorded. There was a
Okay.
blizzard though, so it took him 8 hours. Um,
Oh, to
yeah,
drive?
yeah, because of
No
snow.
way.
Um,
What?
yeah, so it was like I'm glad he didn't turn around. um,
Dude.
but yeah, so we kind of got like snowed in a little bit into this place, and
Okay.
that yeah, the room was awesome. I know I we gave you some funky mics to use for the room too. We did
Yep.
one that's just like in the corner of this room. I think actually, if you like look at some of the videos on my Instagram, you can see where
Neat.
the drums are set up. And
Okay.
then there's a stairwell, and we like it was a tall roof, so we put a
Okay.
mic that's facing up the stairs, so
Cool.
it's away from the drums. And then we
Yeah.
did, and we hung one from the ceiling. Um,
Nice.
that was kind of tough to get to for the other one.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know
Okay.
how you ended up using those,
Yep.
but yeah, we definitely. I mean, they sound fantastic after you worked on them, but it was one of
Thanks.
those things where like we were listening to those drums before anyone
Yeah.
touched them, and we're like,
Yeah.
these are pretty solid from the get go.
Absolutely. Well, it made my job easy because they were good. I think one of the things I noticed was the easiest to work with was like whatever you guys used for overheads, and it was probably the combination of like overheads, how you mic stuff, the space, and then how he played.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just they weren't harsh. It was smooth sounding. So to me, it's like you could really push stuff harder,
Mm-hmm.
and it wouldn't get out of control as fast as you would if you didn't record something as well as you guys did. And so that gave me a lot of latitude to work with, which was like
That's
really
awesome.
awesome.
Sweet.
So way
That's
to
great
go.
to hear. Right on.
Yeah, man.
That's very little me and mostly him. Yeah, he definitely
Man,
knew how to mic the drums up and
that's
what to use
awesome.
on different stuff. The real discovery is that the SM7B is the greatest mic ever made. Because we were using that on everything. Like that's our hi hat mic, and
Oh yeah, heck yeah.
it's like just sounds so good.
Yes. That's like a super popular, like people love it on hats. And it's funny
Yeah,
you say that. I was working on a song the other day for some buddies that I'm working with, and I track drums on that song. And I had that same thought. I was like, oh, these hats sound really good. Sure enough, it was my SM7 on the
yeah.
hats that day. I was like, all right.
It's just
It's a
so
great
good with
mic.
anything loud.
It is.
That's why I love it on um like it's not a, I don't feel like I regularly see it used miking amps, but
No, I
it's
agree.
so like it's sonically sensitive, but volume wise it isn't.
Yeah,
So when you
yeah,
like crank an amp, it doesn't push the mic too hard picking it up,
yeah.
which is just phenomenal. And then that's pretty much the only mic I like the sound of my voice in, which
Okay.
I picked that up because like Andy Hull of Manchester Orchestra said that's the only mic he's recorded his voice on for like the last
Okay.
20 years. And I was like, if
Wow.
that's what you're doing, it's good enough for me.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah.
It's like I've heard people say it about Tom Petty and SM57s
Yeah.
because I think he definitely sang live with them. I don't know if he tracked with them in the studio. He probably did, I'm sure, but they're like, if it's good enough for Tom Petty, it's good enough for me. So
Yeah,
same
man.
with you in Manchester. That's
Well,
great.
and I'm pretty sure the 7B is like Schure's attempt at making a better 57, isn't it? Like,
Okay.
I
Yeah,
think I've
I
seen something
probably
about
so.
them saying that was their goal behind it, was they were
Yeah,
like, how can we take the 57 and improve it? And
man.
I guess the
Heck yeah.
point being,
It's
you do not need a $10,000 microphone to make
nope,
music at all.
nope. Man, what a
So
time we live in too.
yeah,
Like the ability to I mean, I don't know what y'all tracked through as far as interface goes and the other microphones, but what a time to
yeah.
make music that it's so accessible now and like good quality gear is so accessible now.
We used an Apollo for pretty much everything. Our
Heck
drums
yeah.
are an X32, but run through the
Cool.
Apollo preamps.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So yeah,
Yeah, man.
which is, I mean, that's like being able even. I mean, it's 1,200, I think, for the
Yeah.
for the Apollo, which is,
Okay.
I mean, not cheap, but like
Yeah.
once you have it, you don't
hmm
really need anything
hmm
else. You're just
Yep.
good to go. That thing's great. But
So many records are made on Apollos
yeah.
nowadays.
So I guess going back to your most difficult part being those guitars, how did you kind of reconcile that? Like, how did you make those decisions?
I started with which one sounds best to me. And so picked whatever one per song sounded best to me and then just rolled with that. And there's actually a couple moments where I went back, I think, and changed to the other guitar cabinet just because I thought, after a little bit into mixing, I thought, oh, maybe this one will work a little bit better. But typically, I kind of just made the decision and then would hide and make inactive like the other track and just
Hmm,
it's not even in my sight anymore. So I'm just working with one. So
nice. Was there
yeah,
anything else that you felt like led to just like a lot of figuring it out?
trying to think. Nothing that comes to mind immediately off the top of my head. Um, what about you? I'm curious to know for you, what was the most challenging part?
Of recording?
Uh huh.
Uh, I don't know, man. I mean, I can sometimes overdo it. Um, and that was, I'd say, like that's been a struggle over like the last 3 years before kind of narrowing it down, um like within demos and stuff to these
hmm
songs.
Yeah.
But the I think my other thing is I'm a very like big picture conceptual person. So
Okay.
like I saw the whole album or the whole song before I saw like any of the little parts.
Yeah.
And kind of be having to like hyper focus on those detail oriented things definitely takes a lot more energy from me.
Yeah.
Um, in in a lot of ways, though, I think I reached a point of like letting go with some of the guitar stuff where it was like, find a sound. If you like it, just do it instead of
Yeah.
being like, let's tweak this for the next
Yeah.
10, 12 hours.
hmm
I even had I had a buddy who was like, hey, like, do you want me to send you like my microcosm to mess around with this week? And I was like, don't, like, do not do it. I'm like, while I'm sure I would get some great stuff out of that, I'm like,
yeah.
I'm going to end up spending, I'm like, I've got 7 days in this cabin, or I think 10 days. I was like, I'm going to end up spending 48 hours playing with the microcosm and finding like a sound that I'm not sure about. And I was like, if I'd had it for the last 6 months, that would have been great. But
yeah.
I was like, I know my stuff now.
Yep.
So yeah, that was I think one of the challenges is just like over messing with stuff.
Yeah.
Just like a classic electric guitarist issue is we could just make noise for days and never actually write anything. But
Yes.
writing
Yes.
licks is probably my biggest struggle.
Okay.
So like, I mean, that's another Jericho thing. Like that song's gone through so many differences, and like the kind of riff that runs through it now,
Yeah.
or there's two riffs in there, which one of them I wrote the day we recorded it. Like I
Heck
started
yeah.
out with just that beginning like but then the like slide one where it kind of drops in was kind of inspired by a guitar. Someone
Okay.
loaned me this like custom telly that's worth more than my house, and I was just like sliding into the riff, and I was like, that sounds cool. And then I kicked on the 1981 with Too Much Drive and was like, we're putting this in the song. And that was
Come
like,
on.
my drummer was there and did that like kind of like that snare between like that turnaround almost. We were like, this is it. So writing riffs is a whole lot easier when you have a drummer there. um,
Yes.
yeah. And then I think also is the other struggle would be, how do I make write guitar parts that don't compromise the like attack and character of the guitar itself. Which like a good example, I mean, like Live Like You're Alive, which just came out, is like there's that riff that's there, and like the first 10 versions of it probably had way too much distortion and delay on it. And
Okay.
it's like, I'm sure you're familiar with this. When you strip it back, like you've got to kick your confidence way up.
Yep.
And that was just one of those things that was like, all right, like you're not leaning on distortion, you're not leaning
Yeah.
on effects. And then I think I mixed even more dry with that like
Yeah.
you have, I think, in the left ear on that
Yeah.
song. So that would probably be amongst the bigger
Okay.
struggles.
Yeah. Man, I can relate to all of that. What's like I'm looking at like I've got just pedals over here. I've got
Mm-hmm.
one, two, three, four, five, six overdrives. Well, there's some on the floor too. Just like
Oh,
I'm just
dang.
like I need to find that overdrive sound. I'm just like constantly,
Yeah,
But then it's in my studio and it's one thing, and then I go play out and I'm like, wow, that doesn't
totally.
work.
Yeah.
Restart. So yeah, I can relate.
I mean, from your previous employer, every single song has a Morning Glory on it. I've never turned it off,
Yes.
which is great because you can tweak it for like, it's definitely changed more. I'd say
Yeah.
more than almost any pedal. That one changes
Okay.
per song on this album, because
Okay.
it's like when you just need that dry guitar sound. I'm like,
Yeah.
I could start stacking overdrives, or I could just cut some high or
Yeah.
cut some low and turn up the drive or boost this, and it usually does a ton.
It works. I cannot tell you how many people I have talked to in the last few years that have said that specific thing. It's like, this is always on for me.
Yeah.
Like, it's so versatile. And I can think of, I mean, a million guitar players that I follow too. And a Morning Glory has been on their board for years. It's been a
Yeah.
mainstay for them. And so
Has not
I
changed
think,
since 2018 for me. So
oh, heck yes. Heck yes. I mean, I think Josh would say this, but it's like, that's the whole reason JHS
yeah.
exists, really. I mean, that's not the only reason, but that's like, that pedal is like, that's the iconic, everybody knows this pedal, and it's perfect. It's such a good
That
overdrive.
that one, and the
Hmm.
tidy whitey is always on for me too.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a great pedal.
Yeah, I mean, and you can tell this to whoever would love to hear it, but I
Yeah.
hate compressors like
Okay.
90% of the time. Um,
Sure.
because I love to play really quiet, and like I like the dynamic movement,
Hmm.
but most
Yeah.
compressors that I use, like,
Yeah.
look, Boss is great, hate their compressor. Like I can't, every time I played with it for like a month, and I was
Yeah.
just like, this thing like it colors me so much on my sound. And I was like, I want something that I don't notice on my board, that
Nice.
like is just enough. Like like no one else even knows I have a compressor on, but it's just like
Yeah.
once I play quiet, you can still hear it. And
Yeah.
that thing I usually don't turn off. And I use it as a boost
Okay.
a little bit too, just to
Oh,
give
cool.
a little more dirt into my amp.
Okay.
So yeah, those are
Yeah.
my two always ons.
Okay. 2 JHS pedals. Let's go.
Yeah. No, they're great.
They are, man. A Tidy Whitey was the first pedal that I bought when I started working at JHS.
Oh, sick.
Yep. So that's a great compressor, man. If you
Yeah.
haven't tried the Pulp and Peel, you should try that too. It's like
Yeah, I thought about it.
next level up. Yep. We're both like,
Yeah.
real clearing.
All right, I'm gonna end and restart this meeting just because we're at 6 minutes, and that lets me also make sure that the recording works.
Cool.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you learned something or just got some piece of enjoyment from this video. Addison and I actually talked for another 40 minutes about this mixing and production process. And if you want to check that out, you can go and find it on my Patreon page. It's available to every tier, including just the $1 one. So if you just wanted to watch this, you can donate $1 and then just cancel your membership immediately after. And you'll see this video and also get access to an early released single that we talk about throughout the course of this interview. I hope that you learned something. I hope that you enjoyed this, and I can't wait to show you folks more of the music that he and I put together in this. This record is titled Letters to God, Man, and Myself, and it comes out on October 27th. It's mixed by Addison. It is mastered by the amazing Caden Bauman, featuring drums by Kaike Morais and keys by Andy Sloan, and a ton of amazing people have helped put work onto this, and we're so excited to share it with you. If you actually come to a show here where I live in Durango, Colorado on September 15th, you get a downloadable or a CD of this album over a month before it comes out. So if you're impatient, please go and check it out there. We're so excited to share this with you. Please stay in the loop. More awesome news to come.